All right, I want to talk about the old Spectrum now. When I was a kid, I used to go to those wrestling events at the Spectrum, and and the sporting events too. But the wrestling events, I remember I would go to them and we'd watch the event or whatever, and then I would dip away from the seats. Me and my friends, I'd have like two or three friends with me. We'd go up to the upper deck of the Spectrum, and we would just walk around the upper deck. That was our thing, was just walking and exploring and catching the show from up there. Just had more freedom. You know, I've always been one of those kinds of guys, or one of them kind of kids that always like to kind of, get away and explore and have the freedom to do what I want to do. So I remember the Spectrum. I remember the banners hanging from the ceiling at the Spectrum. Everybody from the sport legends to I remember they had the Grateful Dead hanging from there. The banner of the Grateful Dead. There was all kinds of shit that was in the history of that building, and yeah, that was one of the coolest buildings I've ever been in. I've been in Madison Square Garden, you know what I mean. I've been in a lot of sporting arenas and music venues, and I think the Spectrum was probably the best one out of all of them. Trying to remember like what shows that I definitely saw there. I definitely saw SummerSlam '90 there, and I remember seeing a lot of WWF house shows back then. I remember seeing the Ultimate Warrior there and Hulk Hogan. Uh, I wasn't a Hogan guy. When he would come out and he would do his thing, man, it just bored the shit out of me. I was never a Hogan guy until he went in the NWO. But with Warrior, yeah, Warrior was on fire back then. And I remember loving Demolition. They would come out, and Kurt Hennig would come out. Yeah, it was just a great time for pro wrestling back then, and a great time to be living in Philadelphia back then. Havertown is only 5 minutes outside of Philadelphia, so we would always get that real shit. You know what I mean? Our town was very vibrant back then. I remember, it was just a great time period.